Hey, what is up, everyone? Andrew here. Going to be doing a live stream today, and we'll be doing some exploit development, which is going to be a lot of fun. But I'm going to kick things off here with an AMA. So feel free to ask me anything. Can be cybersecurity, job related, reverse engineering, exploit development, programming. Whatever you would like to ask, feel free, and I'll pop them up here and we can talk about them. I also have one quick announcement to make today. We do have a SOC live that's going to be coming up, and I'll have some more details about that later, but that's going to be an awesome opportunity if you are looking to get some SOC training. So, all right, I see some people hopping into the chat already saying hello. Hi, John. Hello, Dragonfire. Hello, Tyrell. Thanks for hopping in. We are going to be doing, again, some exploit development. See a question already coming in here. Are going to be doing vulnerability exploitation on real websites today? No, we won't be doing anything on real websites today because I don't want to get us into any trouble. We only do ethical hacking here on this channel. So nothing on real websites, but we are going to be running through a walkthrough that I've created to teach about binary exploitation and reverse engineering. So today we'll be looking at writing shellcode. All right, we've got another question here. Any advice for a senior in college for cybersecurity, currently on a research team to break and hack our SCADA wall? I've grown very fond of ICS security. Any advice to move into that avenue? That's a great question, something that is near and dear to my heart, having worked as an electrical engineer in the past. So some of the best resources for this actually come from Robert M. Lee, who is the founder of Dragos, which is an ICS security company. So I would suggest going out and looking for his blog because he gets asked this question a lot, how to get into this, and he has a really good blog. I know the one thing that he stresses and recommends is that you really need to understand how industrial control systems and things like power plants and factories work in order to get into that field. So that's actually what he recommends starting with, is learning those fundamentals first and then moving into the security. But that is an excellent resource. There's also a couple courses on Udemy from an instructor, goes by Marcel Rixen. So you could check those out as well. I have taken some of them and they're pretty short, but if you want to dip your toes and learn about it in an easy way, you can check out those Udemy courses. So again, excellent question here. Exploit dev in assembly. Yes. So we're going to be looking at assembly exploit development. Okay, we got another one popped up here. Can you please tell us how we can master binary exploitation and reverse engineering? Well, you are in the right spot. We're going to be working on that today. So that's something that I'm interested in, and I will be walking through a walkthrough that I created. We're going to do level 2 of it today, where we're going to look at writing custom shellcode and how to remove bad characters from that shellcode. Is it recorded for later? Yes. We will be able to watch the stream afterwards for at least a little while. Okay, I want to be a malware analyst or be any kind of research, but a bit afraid for AI. Can you please tell me your opinion? It's a really good question, actually, because recently there have been a lot of really interesting and really powerful tools coming out to use AI and the new MCP protocol for reverse engineering malware. So there's one recently released by someone that works at Google, goes by Lori. She has a lot of really cool videos out on YouTube, and she recently released a MCP plugin for Ghidra that makes reverse engineering a lot easier using it, because AI is actually very good at looking at decompiled or assembly better than humans. Is actually really good use of AI. However, it's always a cat and mouse game, right? So as new tools come out and detections come out and ways to reverse engineer come out, the malware authors who are also potentially going to be making use of AI come out with new ways of evasion. So I think there's definitely still going to be a need for humans to work on this kind of thing. I mean, it's not we're not at the point for a while yet where it's just going to be, AI versus AI. So if you're interested in it, then I would still say to pursue it, but definitely be aware of those AI tools. And probably if you want to excel in that field, then you're going to have to learn to use them. And yeah, I think really it's going to be a tool to make analysts better. And maybe, an analyst can do the work of what two could before potentially, but there's still going to be human need. And the people that understand how those AI systems work and can leverage them are going to be the ones that succeed, in my opinion. So definitely, like I am myself personally trying to learn as much as I can about AI right now, using AI tools, because I think it's going to be a necessity in cybersecurity moving forward. So, not just specific to malware analysis, but pretty much every single cybersecurity tool. Now's a good time. It's still not too late to, start really learning about how LLMs work, their vulnerabilities, how you can write simple apps, how you can host them yourself. I would really suggest everyone, start doing it right now. It's still in the early days, so you can set yourself apart from potential other candidates by doing that. So great, really good question, though. Really appreciate that question. Okay, bug bounty question here. I am working as a bug bounty hunter. Can you please tell me which type of bugs is easy as a newcomer? So there's a couple trains of thought to this, and my personal one is that instead of thinking of what is the easiest as a newcomer, is to pick something that you don't think is like right at the top of what everyone thinks is easiest. So for example, I'm tempting just to go for cross-site scripting or XSS because that's what everyone thinks of, but everyone is looking for that. Instead, I'd pick something else. I mean, it doesn't need to be something super complicated, but that's, a little bit more down the list of what people think of. And then get really, really good at just that, and start looking for that. That's my opinion on the matter, because if you're just looking for what is supposed to be the easiest, everyone's going to be looking for that. Like those low hanging fruits are going to be grabbed. So pick something, get really good at that one thing, and then start looking for that. That's my opinion on that. Okay, are we going to work on modern mitigations, and what architecture are we going to be looking at? So the walkthrough that I've created starts from like assuming basically nothing about exploit development and reverse engineering, and then all the way down. So not in this specific video today, because we're going to be working on level 2, and it goes up to like level, I think 6 or 7 is what I've got planned for it. But in the further levels, yes, we will be working on modern mitigations, like avoiding non-executable stacks with return object, return oriented programming or ROP chains, and how we can chain together vulnerabilities like memory leaks to get around things like ASLR or stack canaries. But those are going to come in later on levels. So today, what we'll be specifically looking at is writing custom shellcode and how to remove bad characters. Here's a basic newbie question. Can you explain in layman terms why an unquoted service path is such a problem? Um, this can be used for privilege escalation in Windows, as I assume what you're talking about. I don't really fully understand the details of how it works in the background, but essentially you can use this to do perform privilege escalation. So hopefully that helps answer your question. My face is new in this channel. So yeah, I haven't been live streaming as much on TCM. That's more Alex. But yeah, my name is Andrew Bellini. I also go by Digital Andrew. So I am a content creator at TCM Security. Been here full time for about a year now, but I've had a relationship with TCM Security for almost 2 years now. I do the I did the IoT course and certification, the help desk course and certification, and also recently an assembly course so far. Good question. Is this stream okay for someone with no background knowledge? Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is welcome here. So I have been working through the Overflowme walkthrough. In the last live stream I did level one. We're going to do level two today. So if you didn't do level one, then you may want to go back at some points and go through that if something you're trying to learn. However, yeah, I'm starting from the beginner, and you're also welcome to ask any questions you want, beginner questions, advanced questions. I'll try my best to answer them here. Oh, this is a great question here. Any suggestions to freshers who are interested to start or switch career? Yes, I have a lot of suggestions here. So it depends, I guess, on what you're coming from and your background knowledge. But I think the first thing that's most important is you got to learn the basics and build a good foundation before moving on to the more fancy stuff. So I would definitely suggest, if you don't have the prerequisite knowledge, to nail that down. We do have a free tier at TCM, so 100% free. There's no paywall, no credit card required. It's not like a sign up and you get a month free. It's just always 100% free. So I would start with the courses there. There's one on help desk, which is 17 hours long. And even if you don't want to work in help desk, it still covers all the core technology you would need, like Linux, Windows, what are operating systems, networking, all that stuff. I would take the rest of the courses in there as well, and then try and decide on what you want to do. Nail down your dream job title. So if that's penetration tester, cool. If that is ethical hacker, if that is SOC analyst, figure out what you want to do. And then what I would suggest is go look at job postings for those roles, and see what they're asking. What kind of experience are they asking for? What kind of certs are they asking for? And then create a roadmap, put dates on it for how you're going to get, at least 50% of what those job postings are asking for, and work your way through that roadmap. That's my best advice. One other thing I always suggest to people that are trying to get into cybersecurity that maybe haven't done it or don't have that experience is, if you're doing a career switch, look at what you're doing right now in your current job and think of if there's any way you can do some security or IT related tasks in your current role. Usually, if you put your mind to it, there's some ways you can think of to do that. And if you're doing well in your current role and you go to your manager and say, hey, I want to take on these extra responsibilities and they're going to benefit, our team, our company, whatever, in these ways, they're most likely going to say yes. So for me, for example, in past roles, I volunteered when I was working as a developer to be the security champion for a team, which meant I was the liaison for the AppSec team. Even before that, when I was working as an electrical engineer, we were going to have pen tests on our embedded devices. And I volunteered to be the liaison and be involved with working on the external pen test team. But you can even volunteer, for example, to give a lunch and learn about phishing or social engineering, anything like that. And then when it comes time to interview or put on your resume, you actually have some security experience demonstrated in a job, and you can talk about that, which to me has been beneficial. And I've heard that from other people as well. Is there anywhere else we can watch this other than X, Twitter? Yes, you can watch it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Maybe Britt, if you could post some of those channels into the chat to check them out. But yeah, you can watch us on all of those platforms, and you should definitely make sure you are subscribed or connected with us on all those platforms, especially YouTube, because we release a lot of awesome content on our YouTube, including we recently released the first 12 hours of our SOC 101 course, which is an amazing course by Andrew Prince, a paid course, and you can watch the first 12 hours of that for free, which is pretty cool. So you should definitely check out our YouTube channel. All right. Just looking for some other good questions here. Another ICS one. Love the ICS and SCADA questions. Is there demand for cybersecurity professionals in the SCADA industrial control system right now? So yes, definitely. And personally, I think there's going to be even more demand for this in the near future, because just the landscape of the world right now and the importance of these systems. And I think for the most part, they're pretty insecure. And one of the things that's really preventing them being exploited is that a lot of countries would see that as kind of being like an escalation past just a cyber attack to do something to sensitive control systems. So really that's just kind of like why they're not doing it. But at some point that line is going to be crossed. And I think, yeah, there's going to be a lot of need to secure those systems in the future, because a lot of them, the security is not great. They're very, very weak. Okay. What if I can't afford to go to a university but still want to go into cybersecurity? That's a good question. I don't think you need a university degree at all to get into cybersecurity. I mean, some specific rules or job postings may require it, but for the most part, it's definitely not required. You don't need you don't need a degree. It's not like other roles. Like, for example, I'm an engineer, and like you need, at least where I live, a degree in engineering to call yourself an engineer. But cybersecurity is nice. It's not like that. So yeah, you can definitely still get into the field. There's lots of free and very affordable training now, which is nice. So again, we talked about our free tier. We've got paid courses that are accessible for $30 a month, which is very affordable. There's also lots of other providers now that are doing excellent pay what you can or free training. So one that I like is Black Hills Information Security, BHIS. They have a pay what you can course that you can pay $0 and take their training, and it's very good. So I would suggest that as well. Definitely do not need a degree, though. A lot of people that are in cybersecurity right now do not have degrees because university is slower to catch up to the demands of the market, and cybersecurity is a new field. So it's only recently there's been degrees. I enjoyed your practical help desk course. Cheers. So anyway, there's a plug for our help desk course, which is on our free tier. Again, 100% free. So, I mean, nothing to waste other than your time if you want to take a look at it. All right. Which programming language do I need to know for reverse engineering? I have experience in Node.js, JS Express, and MongoDB. So it really depends what you're going to be reverse engineering, but for the most part, you generally need to understand C and some assembly, although assembly is becoming less and less required now with how good the decompilers are, but you probably should have a basic understanding of assembly and C. And then also, like, you'll want to still know the language and the quirks of whatever language the application you're reversing was written in, because the way that it works with the decompiler, right, is say you write something in Golang, for example. So then that gets compiled and turned into assembly, assembled into the machine code and linked into a binary. When you go and look at that binary, if you disassemble it, it will just be an assembly, right? Because that's the great equalizer of all the code. And then if you take a decompiler to that assembler, generally it's going to spit it back out in C, but that's not how it was written. So you will want to understand some of the quirks of whatever language you're going to be reverse engineering. All right. I'm new to the cyber world, but I have background in languages, geopolitics, social media, disinformation, etc. I'm really interested in red team work, but I feel like I'm years behind because of a lack of programming knowledge. Do you have any tips? Okay. First off, you definitely do not need to do programming or fully understand programming to get into cybersecurity. I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. So, if you want to go into red teaming in the literal sense of it, where you're going to be doing like adversary emulation and things like that, then yeah, you're probably going to need to understand programming. But with your background in things like languages, geopolitics, social media, disinformation, I think you could definitely leverage those if this is something you're interested into to get into more of open source intelligence, social engineering roles in a red team. I mean, that could be very valuable. There are quite a few people that have careers in cybersecurity without doing as much of the technical stuff, but instead they're doing that kind of social engineering testing. So I would suggest there's if that's something that interests you, check out the podcast Darknet Diaries, and there is one. I think it's just called Alethe. It's Alethe, and she talks about her journey of getting into cybersecurity. And she actually just works as like a social engineer, so doing phishing testing of physical security things like that. So definitely something to check out. If you do want to learn programming though, and you want to get into the technical side, I would suggest just getting started. It's not as probably intimidating as it seems. And nowadays, with tools like ChatGPT and other AI assistant tools, it makes it a lot easier to learn programming, in my opinion. So, and again, there's a free course in the free tier. Uh, Programming Fundamentals 100 will teach you Python absolutely free. So I would check that out. Just picked up the PHDA training and cert voucher on section 4 now, solidifying knowledge foundation as I'm going into month 6 of a help desk role. Cool. Awesome. Good luck on taking the certification, and glad you're enjoying the course so far. Okay, it is really hard getting into cybersecurity field as a fresher. No one wants to hire an unexperienced fresher. If no one hires, how am I going to gain some experience? Yeah, that is a tough one. There's this catch 22 of you need experience to get a job, and you need a job to get experience. So definitely agree that is frustrating, and I've experienced that myself as well. So I have a couple thoughts on this. So the first one is, I will admit the job market right now, at least I'm in North America, and it is not great right now. Not just cybersecurity, but also for most tech roles, the job market is just not good right now. And we've seen that come in ebbs and flows, up and down. It'll be really hot, and then it's not. Um, and one thing that seems to always happen is it bounces back, and then there'll be jobs again. So, and then that's when it's easier to get some experience in as a fresher. So that's one thing. The other thing is there are ways that you can get some experience. So I already talked about one, which is trying to leverage your current job or role, do anything you can to get some experience there. There's also volunteering. So sometimes there'll be ways to pick up volunteering. You can do things like go to conferences and volunteer to work with some of the villages to get some experience. That's one. You can also, it depends like what roles you're looking for, but right now, if you're trying to go straight into a cybersecurity role without any tech experience, that's going to be hard to do. Honestly, I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but you may want to lower your initial goal and try for an IT role that's going to be easier to land and then move up from there. And I'm not saying all of this is ideal or fair or anything like that. I just really want to share the reality of the job market right now and what's going on there. Good question though. And yeah, it kind of sucks that that's what's going on right now. Okay, I am not able to find a pathway to start. I have got a ton of different courses, but whenever I start, I feel like I'm missing the prerequisites like API, web requests, etc. So you might want to check out a roadmap then. Like we've got a few roadmaps, or if you Google different roadmaps or look for one on YouTube, then you can usually find roadmaps to get to whatever your end goal is. And then I would start by taking a look at that. Just looking to see if there's any other. Yeah, follow up to this one. Yes. So if you're doing like red teaming there's two kind of definitions of red teaming that I think people sometimes mix together early on when they're learning about cybersecurity. So you have like the red team, which encompasses all of the offensive security side. So penetration testers would fit into like that grouping. But then you also have red teaming, which is like a subset then of more advanced adversarial emulation, or where you're going to try and be like way more sneaky. And a lot of times part of that is launching phishing campaigns or social engineering. That is what like criminals or nation state actors or things like that would also be leveraging to get initial access. So understanding really good OSINT and social engineering is going to be an absolute for that. And a lot of times there will be teams, and there might be someone on the team that's all they do is their job is to get in, get an implant planted somewhere, sneak into the building, get in whatever, and get some sort of first access to the server room or the network. And then the other teams or other technical people are going to take it from there. So yeah, there's a lot of few really good Darknet Diaries episodes about these types of teams and their exploits of breaking into buildings and social engineering their way in. All right, I got time for one more question here. All right, here's one. What are the platform where we can volunteer? So what I would suggest is take a look at the conferences that are going on in your area and see if there's like villages or a local DEF CON chapter, or if there's a B-sides or something like that, and then seeing if you can volunteer for those and start meeting people. Because the other thing that I haven't really talked about yet, but that is also super important for landing your first job is networking. So going to these conferences, being active as a volunteer is going to help you network as well, and then meet other people that may already have jobs or can point you in the right direction or make an introduction or a suggestion. But I would suggest volunteering at your local conferences, helping out there. And then, yeah, that's going to go really far. I want to answer one more and then we'll hop in. So why is the job market not good? What personnel are impacted by the bad job market? So there's a lot of factors that are going into this right now. So a few of the big ones is just the general uncertainty around the stock market, and that really seems to impact tech companies because they have a lot of reliance on keeping their stocks good, and it is very easy to cut costs by laying off people that are developing things or that they see as cost centers like cybersecurity. And then definitely in the US, the layoffs around cybersecurity personnel in government positions definitely isn't helping the job market there, because you now have a lot of people that were working in the public sector that are going to be moving to the private sector and competing for those jobs. So that's a couple of high level reasons for it. And what personnel are impacted, like it's kind of all across the board, but I would say like it definitely impacts the entry level the most, because sometimes people, if they need a job and they have experience, they'll settle for something a little bit less experience than they have, and it just kind of bumps everyone down all the way. So that is who is being impacted the most. So that is a lot of good questions today. And if I see any other good ones pop through, I will do my best to answer them. But I am now going to move over and we're going to run through this walkthrough and take a look at writing some custom shell code. And we'll see how far we get in it today. And if we don't get all the way through this level, then I'll pick it up the next time that I live stream. So let me switch over here. Perfect. Okay. Move myself down here. Okay, so I am going to be working through again the Overflowme walkthrough here. So let's just go to the main README here. So this is like a vulnerable binary and walkthrough that I've written to teach about exploit development, reverse engineering binaries, Stack Overflows, you name it. So if you want to, you can grab it here. I'll get, maybe if Britt can drop a link into the chat as well. It's just in my GitHub profile. And so we previously ran through level 1. So a quick recap of what we did in level 1 is that there's a binary Overflowme that we walked through, took a look at how it worked, found out that it was vulnerable to a Stack Overflow. And then we wrote a very basic exploit that just jumped us to another section of code. So we learned about how the return address works inside of the stack and how we can modify that. So the second level here, so I'll just jump into level 2 here. And then if we take a look at the README, so each level has its own README. So this one is shellcoding and exploiting. So the challenge for this one is to get the overflow binary to print out the message TCM rules without modifying the source code. And then, so if you do want to follow along and later, so if I'm going too fast today, you can look at like every single step here inside of the README and it has all of the commands and everything you need to copy in. So definitely check this out if you're interested. It's all in this GitHub. I'm going to walk through as much of level 2 here as I can today and talk about how to write shellcode, custom shellcode. And then if we have enough time, we'll do the exploit. And if not, we'll do the exploit next time. All righty. So let's hop open VS Code. So I am on I'm just going to close all these here. This is a Linux virtual machine that I'm just remoted into here. So you'll need to be on Linux to run this. Perfect. So let's pop open the README here and we'll walk through this here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this level makes use of assembly source code to help teach about the basics of binary exploitation. So we can create this. So if we go in here, we have this overflowme.s, which just really quickly to review, we have this echo_print function. And here's the assembly code here that's responsible for reading the user input and storing it onto the stack. And we're creating here, we're actually moving down the stack to allocate space on it to hold it 512 bytes. And then we read in here onto the stack. However, there is a issue with the code here where we have a mismatch. This move into RDX is what sets up the read syscall with how many bytes we should read in. So we are reading about double. We're allowing to read in about double the amounts that we have allocated, which is where we can have that stack overflow take place. So we can assemble this and link it with the make file that's here. So if we go make Overflowme, oops, got to go into level 2 here. Make Overflowme. What am I? Oh. If I could type, that would make this a lot better. Perfect. And then we can run the binary here. So it's just asking for an input. So we should say hi, prints it back out and says, thanks for not overflowing me. However, if we do put in more than 512 characters, it will overflow it. All right, so let's go back to the README here. So we just assembled and linked the binary, and we did this echo underscore print. So in the previous level, we found that this binary was vulnerable to a stack overflow. And if we crafted that specific input, then we could actually have it jump to the return address that we specified. So what we did is we actually jumped it to a section of the code. If we actually just open this up here, Overflowme, we have a section of the code here called hidden underscore print, and we jumped to this section of the code, which was dead code, and executed it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a stack smashing attack. And instead of jumping to somewhere that's already existing in the code, we're going to put our own code into the stack and then jump to that. So let's go back to the README here. And then let's take a look. So now we need to print out TCM rules, but that's not anywhere actually in the source code. So what we're going to do is a stack smashing attack, which this is a very, very old type of exploit to do. And what we're going to do now is when we craft our exploit, that's going to be input. So when we run this, it gives us an opportunity to input some text. Instead of just putting in A's or anything like that, we're going to do a specific crafted input that's going to put in our own shellcode, and then we'll use the return address. We'll overflow that to point into the stack so that it's going to execute our shellcode, and this is called a stack smashing attack. So the first thing we'll need to do when setting up for this exploit is to start writing our own shellcode. So there are a few ways that you can just get shellcode. You can go out on the internet and get it. You can use something like MSF Venom, like part of Metasploit, to generate shellcode. However, the issue with these is that they're most likely going to be picked up by different detection methods, antiviruses, things like that. And then also, a lot of times when you're doing exploits, you're going to have restrictions on size or bad characters or other things that you need to work around. So you should definitely learn how to write your own so that you can work around those. Checking through the chat here, see this one that I want to talk about because this is my course. Do we have an assembly course? Yes, we do. So you should check it out. It's called Assembly 101. We go over stuff like this in much more detail as well. So thanks, Hamza, for letting him know as well. Okay, so back to the writing of our own shellcode. So yeah, we're going to need to write our own shellcode, because what happens when we run this binary, Overflowme or any binary, what happens is it gets loaded into the computer's memory, right? So, and it's actually, loaded in as ones and zeros. That's why it's called a binary. And there's going to be different parts of the binary. So we might have text or data sections where we have strings, but part of it is going to be the actual machine code. So our assembly gets translated into actual machine code, which is ones and zeros. Those are the actual instructions that go into the processor and tell it to do something. So if we're going to be injecting into the stack, which is in the actual memory, we can't just inject in our own, code, even in assembly or anything like that. We need the raw ones or zeros or their hex representation of that code to be able to inject it in. So this is where writing shellcode comes into play. And the reason it's called shellcode is usually you goal of it is going to be to get a shell, but really we can write it to do whatever we want to do. And in this one specifically, it's just to print a string. So we'll take a look at how to print it. And I'm going to show my process for doing this. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. This is just one way that I found that works well for me. But yeah, there's multiple ways to do this. So the first thing that I do then is I like to write my shellcode in raw assembly itself, and then I'll convert that. So I'll assemble it and link it into a binary and then pull the actual machine code out of that. The reason for that is because it's just way too way too hard to write machine code itself, and there's really no advantage to it. It's a lot easier to write assembly. So when you are writing shellcode, generally what you're going to be doing is just setting up to make a system call. So if you're not familiar with what a system call is in Linux, this is when we can pass off to the operating system and ask it to do something for us. So there's lots of different syscalls. Usually that's how they're referred to as syscalls. And one of them is printing, but there is a very excellent list of all of the syscalls here at this chart. So I'll just pop this open here and then bring it over so we can take a look at it. So we've got this syscall table here. This is from the Chromium projects. This is Google open source. But if you scroll down, I really like this table because it goes through the details of all of these syscalls for Linux. And you'll notice we have all of them here. So we've got read, write, open, close, and then there's a lot of them here. So there's even ones like exec and things like that. So if you want to do shells or things like that, we're able to. However, the one that we want is just the write syscall. So the nice thing here is that it gives us the syscall number. So we need to know this. And then it also tells us what arguments we need to pass in. So for this one, there's 3. There is the file descriptor. So for us, it's going to be standard out. There's a pointer to a character. This is going to be the start of the string we want to print. And then there's the size. So this is how many characters we want to print. So when I'm writing shellcode, regardless of what I want it to do, I usually start by consulting this table and then picking the syscall, because pretty much that's always generally going to be what you're doing, is setting up to make some sort of syscall and then passing that off. And then if you want some more details as well, you can go to the man pages for them. So here's one right here for the write syscall. So if we check out the man page here, you get some more details about it as well, which makes it a little bit easier. And sometimes there's some examples as well in these man pages. So taking a look at that write syscall, we need arg0, which is RDI, which is one of the registers in the processor. That's set to the file descriptor, which in our case is standard out. arg1, which is RSI, is a pointer to the first character in the string. arg2 is RDX, which is the number of chars we want to print. So the steps that we'll need, I like to write these out when I'm first starting out with writing shellcode, is to write out all the steps that we'll need to do. So the first thing is we'll need to push the string we want to print onto the stack in reverse order. So the reason for this, if you have written other assembly or looked at it, you might see that they can have like a data section where we can put strings into our binary, but we can't have any of that. We need everything to be self-contained in our actual shellcode. So to do that, we're going to push the string we want to print onto the stack. And you'll see this happening even in more advanced shellcode where we're trying to execute a command or something. It'll be pushed onto the stack, and we need to push it in reverse order because of the way that the stack grows. So after that, we'll then need to set RAX to the syscall number, which for read we just saw is 1. We need to set RDI to the file descriptor number for standard out, which is also 1. Then we need to set RSI to point to the start of the string, which conveniently for us is where the stack pointer is, because if you think about how the stack works, and if we push on those 8 characters for TCM rules, then it's going to move the stack pointer down 8 bytes. And since we pushed it on backwards, then it's going to be right at the start of that T, and then we can print through it. And then we just need to set RDX to the length of the string to print, which is 8. So if you want to see the code for this, which I'll go over now, this is print_shellcode.s. So we can take a look at it here instead of just, writing it out. I've included it here so we can talk about how this works. So at the start here, these are just assembler directives that are going to be required to assemble this. So the first thing we do, again, is this is setting up to push onto the string. So this is the actual ASCII representation of TCM rule. So this is T, for example, this is Z, and we're pushing this on in reverse order. Then we push it onto the stack. Then we have these moves here, which this one just sets REX to 1, sets RDI to 1. Then we move the stack pointer into RSI because RSI is pointing to the top of, or is going to be pointing to the stack. And then we move 8 into RDX, and then we perform a syscall. So now what we can do is actually just assemble and link this and run it and make sure that it actually works. So again, I've included a make file here. So if you're not familiar with make is a tool to help with compiling, assembling, linking. It's kind of like a build tool. And then it includes like all of the bash that would actually go behind the scenes and do what needs to be done. So if you're curious what's happening behind the scenes, check out the make file. So we can run make print_shellcode here. Perfect. And now you'll notice we actually have the binary there for print_shellcode. So if we run this here, we go /print_shellcode. You'll notice that it printed out TCM rules just like we wanted to. However, then we have a segmentation fault, which means it crashed. And seg fault usually means we're trying to access bad memory. So the reason for that is if we actually take a look at the code for this, which is right here, we didn't end this program properly. So we didn't follow the proper flow of we should, exit properly, have a proper function epilogue. We didn't do any of that. But that's okay, because all we're concerned about is then being able to rip the raw machine code out of this. We don't care that this actual binary itself for this crashed. All we did was compile this so that it will get turned into the machine code, and then we can grab it. So to do that, there's a few ways, and I'll just walk through the one way that I like to do it. So first off, I'll usually look at it with a tool called objdump. So that's make sure I'm on my terminal here. obj dump, and then we need to actually give the syntax it's in. So this one's in Intel format, and then we'll go -D for disassemble, and it's going to be called print_shellcode is what we named the binary. Perfect. And so this gives us some details about it. It's an ELF X and X64, x86-64, and then we have the disassembly here. So these left columns, this is all the memory addresses. In here in the middle, this is what we want. This is the actual machine code. And then to the right of it, we have the actual assembly. So each of these lines here refer to one instruction. They're called an opcode. And we actually want all of this in the middle. So the one thing with objdump is it's kind of hard to get it to just print out the machine code. So, we could like go through, try and copy this, then delete all the other stuff. We could do some like bash for it as well. But I actually have another tool that I really like to use that makes this a lot easier. It's called XXD. So if you run XXD and then you just run that on the binary, so it's print_shellcode. Now we get it in a little bit of an easier format. However, if we actually run that again, but we pass in the -P option, it will actually just show us the raw hexadecimal of this. So you notice there's like a lot of zero padding and stuff in here still, but Since we ran that obj dump, which I will just run it again here now, we can see where the start and end of it is. So it ends with 0F05 and it starts with 48B954. So what I like to do then is I'll just pipe this into grep. I'm going to do A2, so we bring back 2 lines, and then I'll just do the first maybe 3 or 4 characters here. So we'll go 48B954. Perfect. And then we can see all the code here, and we're just looking for where it ends with on 05. So then I'll grab this right here, copy that. So that's the actual shell code here. So if I just actually paste it here so you can see, that now is the actual just string of raw shell codes that we need. So this is what we would use in our exploit. However, before we run that, what I like to do, or before I actually waste time going and trying to go with the exploit, because there can be a lot of stuff that goes wrong in your exploit, you want to make sure your shell code works. So to do that, one of the easy ways is you can write a C program that you know works, that basically mimics what happens when your shell code gets run. So I've written one here called test_shell.c. And this is a basic C program that essentially will execute shellcode similar to how if you were to execute it out of the stack. So all you need to do is just paste in your shellcode here, which I've already got one example here. Paste this shellcode in and then compile this and run it and make sure it does what you expect it to do. So you'll notice here, we actually need, though, our shellcode to be in what's called hexadecimal escape sequence. So we have this x/ in front of it. So if we just paste ours in here, we have it in this format. So we could go through and manually do /x before each one. However, that is not very time efficient. So I also have a Python script that I use for this, which I call shellcode_formatter.py. So we'll go Python 3 shellcode, and then you just paste in the string. So just keep in mind, if you copy it through grep like this, you'll notice how I've got 2 lines here. So make sure you get rid of that extra line. And then, this just formats it, pops it out into how it's supposed to be set. So I'm going to grab that, and then we'll paste it into here. Save that, and then it's actually nice. I just put the compilation instruction right here into a comment. So we can copy this, paste it, and then if we just run this /test_shell. Okay, so this printed it out and it worked. So you'll see here we got TCM rules, segfault. So this is good to see because it's basically exactly as when we ran the binary, but just with the shellcode stripped out. So now we know our shellcode works. However, there is one more key step here that we need to take a look at. So in this program, I wrote it to also print out the length of bytes that it sees for the shellcode. And you'll notice that it uses string len for that, which is a C function that works on strings. And if you take a look at it, it printed out 15 bytes. So if you look at the code here, we go, so for example, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 15. There's a lot more. So the reason for this is because the next byte here now is x00. So in C, 00 or x00 is what's considered a null terminator. So that is used to signify the end of strings. So when this shellcode, which initially is going to be usually interpreted as data, not machine code, is handled by C code that is treating it as a string, it sees this and says, yes, this is the end of the string. I'm not going to do what I want to do with this. So for example, when it does string length, it's just loops over this. If you actually looked at like the bare bones assembly of it, it checks each of the bytes, increments a counter until it gets to 0, and then it just stops. So the issue with this is very frequently in C code, if you have stack overflows, buffer overflows, whatever, they're usually going to be from an input from a user, which is going to be treated as a string. So for example, it might be copying things into a buffer, which means that our shellcode will not fully be copied in. So we need to avoid using null terminators. And now there could be other things too in the code, like it could be stripping out maybe commas or spaces. And all of those have their own ASCII character that is different than what is being used in the opcode. So we need to find a way to be creative with how we write our assembly so that we do not include any bad characters. And for us in this one, it's fairly easy. There's only one bad character, which is 0. So let's take a look at how we can go about removing that. But first, let's look at the offending lines here. So if we run objdump again here, and then what is it? M dash, yeah, that's right. Perfect. So each one of these lines here, we want to look at and see if they have 0 zeros in them. So if they have like 1 0 like this, right, that's fine. So this, because remember, we're working in bytes. So this is getting treated as 0f. However, if we look at, so we've got 3 lines here that are going to be the ones impacting us. So this one, and this one. So the reason for that is if I just like write this out here. So if we do something like move RCX 8 or whatever, or maybe RAX1. So if we do that, because RAX is the full register, this is actually the equivalent of writing out this. It'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So that's why we end up with, if I just clear this again and run that objdump, that's why we end up with all of this, because the actual opcode for move RAX is this 48C7C0, and then after that, we just put the number that's going to be moved in, which is all of those zeros. So luckily, there's a way to get around this, and you'll notice for us, it's pretty straightforward. It's all these moves that are messing us up. So for legacy purposes, we can actually move directly into the lowest bytes of the register. So I've already got it out here, so we can take a look at it here. So instead of moving into all the way into RAX, we can go into the A low, which is the lowest byte of the register, of the whole RAX register. So if we move 1 into this, then the opcode for this is not, it's just going to have 0, 1 in it. It's not going to have all the zeros. The one thing to keep in mind when you are doing moves like this is that the other bytes or segments of the register, they aren't automatically cleared out. We can't trust what they are. And the syscall is going to look at all of RAX itself. So what we have to do beforehand is we actually have to go and 0 out RAX. So one thing we could do then is try and move 0 into it, but then we're back into our scenario where we are using 0 again. Luckily, we have access to exclusive OR, which is probably one of the most powerful tools that you can use in assembly. You'll see it used a lot for lots of different things, but with an exclusive OR, if you XOR the same thing with itself, it will always be 0, just the way that it works. So if you exclusive OR RAX with RAX, that means that it will just essentially put 0 into it. Now, the nice thing about that is, though, that opcode will not have 0 anywhere in it. So you'll notice before we move in here, we 0 it out. Then RDI, we just do a trick of, well, there's already 1 in RAX, so why don't we just move that into RDI? And then again, to get into the RDX, we do the same trick. We 0 it out here. And then now if we go and make this, so we'll go make, and it is, what is it, print underscore shell code underscore rm underscore bad underscore chars. Perfect. So now if we run Well, we can just run this and make sure it works. Works just like we wanted it to. And if we run ob jump on that, so perfect. So now if we take a look at it, if we go through all of these down here, there are no 0 zeros anywhere in this. So we've got rid of, so just a little bit of creative thinking about how different ways we can do this. We have now gotten around those bad characters, because now if we run that same XXD, oops, and now we can grab here. Go Python 3. Grab this now. Okay, and now go into test shell. Blow this all out of here. Now we can recompile this. So that's GCC. Perfect. So let's run. And now we get that it's 29 bytes and it runs properly. So now at this point, we have our exploit string ready to go. This kind of took us to where I thought we would get at this point in the lesson. So since we're about an hour in now, I'm going to answer just a few more questions because I saw there were some good ones come through here. And then the next time that I live stream, I'll finish this level up and maybe we'll start on the level after this. But the next step of this is going to be, just if you want to peek ahead, is going to be to go and craft an exploit so that we put this shellcode into the stack and then have a return address that forces the program to jump to that and execute it and then print it. And then after that, we'll also take a look at that and how we could actually write a shell for this as well. So not just printing out a character. But yeah, again, if you're coming to this late and you want to check this out, then the maybe Britt can drop a link. Yeah, Britt just dropped a link here. So that is my GitHub profile and a link to this repo. And there is a README that walks through every step, the whole thing, all through. I would recommend first read this README, the main one, then do, if you haven't, do level 1, and then do level 2, and hopefully I'll have like level 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way coming out, and they'll keep getting more advanced and go into modern mitigations for stack exploits. So that is going to wrap up, though, this portion of it. I'm going to take questions for a few minutes here before we wrap up, because I saw some good ones. So if you have any other questions too, feel free to drop them in and I will answer them as best as I can here. Okay. This exercise is from the Assembly 101 course. So the Assembly 101 course ends with a section on memory safety where we do go over similar to this. It's a little bit of a different program, but it is, yeah. The Assembly 101 course actually doesn't go as depth as I would like to go into in this walkthrough, but yeah, I would check anyway. If you haven't checked out the Assembly 101 course, like it actually starts just like from writing assembly, not specific to exploit dev, because in my opinion, like if you want to learn reverse engineering exploit development, you need to learn forward engineering first. So it spends a lot of time just talking about how programs are written and what they look like from a developer perspective. So yeah, but it is from the course. How often will you be streaming exploit dev on this channel? So I'm going to be streaming it for the next while because it's kind of what I'm interested in right now. The schedule are on right now. There's 3 of us, myself, Andrew Prince, who does more blue team content, and then Alex Olson, who does web app stuff. So it'll probably be once every 3 weeks that I am doing this. So that's how often. But definitely, yeah, follow along on the GitHub because I'll have those out before I stream it. So if you want to just follow along on the GitHub too, then definitely check that out. Let me see here the pinned messages. Which certifications are required for mastering binary exploitation and reverse engineering? Is it possible for us to pursue those certifications for free? There are not a lot of certifications for this. There is only one that I am aware of, which is the OSED. Outside of that, there is not a lot of certifications in this. This is kind of more of a thing that is advanced, and you will prove that you know through your knowledge of it in interviews and doing it, maybe through blog posts and things like that. Yeah, there's not a lot of certifications, but there are a lot of free resources for learning about this. So, I mean, there's the GitHub that I just linked. There's some really good Medium articles if you just search about learning this. There's a lot of good YouTube content about reverse engineering. So there is definitely some to take a look at. All right. Hi, Andrew. I am interested in offensive and threat intel. With AI being used everywhere, it's necessary to master fundamentals alongside usual tools and AI tools. Where should I begin? That is a good question. Um, I got a couple books on it, so I'm a book learner myself. Um, so there's one book that I recently just got called Hacking AI, which I have been reading about that I am interested in. That is specific to actually pen testing AI itself. Using the tools and mastering and using them, I would suggest just start playing with them. One of the things that helped me learn more about AI, or is helping me, I'm not an expert by any means, is starting to run my own models and seeing how they perform and how I can tune them and writing tools that integrate with them. So if you're not familiar, I would check out Ollama, which is a really easy way to get up your own model running locally. And there's a really good Python library that you can use to interact with those. So, I mean, I would start writing my own tools and, and seeing what you can do with them. It's kind of cool because right now it's like it's kind of like the golden age of learning about AI. I know it's happening fast, but like there's so much that can be done with it. Yeah, so we're gonna have a YouTube video actually by me coming out this Friday where I'm looking at deploying small AI models on a Raspberry Pi 5 and how those can be used for hacking. More specifically, I'm using it with a basic chatbot to do a romance scam, and I thought that was interesting. But yeah, start making your own tools. I think that's probably the best way. All right. I just started binary exploitation. Can you suggest a few online resources or books that you learned from? Yeah, so the one resource that's really good is Crack Me. So I would check that out for sure because that is a very good online resource to learn reverse engineering. As far as books, I have a few books on assembly that really helped me. Or I'll grab a couple from my bookshelf here quickly. Okay, I got a few here that are on my close bookshelf. So this book is really good if you want to learn about assembly and like how computers work. If I get this in focus, Introduction to Computer Architecture. It's a no starch book. I really like their books. That this book is awesome. I've read this whole book front to back a couple times. Really helped me understand about how computers work at a low level. Another good one for exploit development. This one's old, but honestly, it's still good. The fundamentals. This book is quite old now. This one, the Shellcoder's Handbook. Oops, this is an old book. I think I have the copy used or something. This is version 2 of it, and I think it's still like 15 years old, but the fundamentals are still the same. And this goes over like writing your own shell code, all the stuff that we were talking about today. Very good book. And then this one's pretty good if you want to learn about Ghidra software reverse engineering. If I can get it in focus here. That one's pretty good as well if you're into books. Yeah, there's a lot of really good free resources. You just look on Medium for exploit development and whatnot. So those are some books that I would recommend there. Two years into LLMs and Python, the more I learn, the more I realize I know nothing. I pinned this one because, oh man, this is the honest truth. Like, yeah, I find this all the time. Once you kind of reach that, there's like this, peak of learning stuff. And at a certain point, when you've learned a decent amount, you realize that, there's so much you don't know. So, anyway, that is a good point to be at, though, once you have that self realization that, there's so much more to learn because, yeah, there is always so much more to learn. So, nothing wrong with that. I see this question asked a lot, and I have one specific piece of advice for this because I don't want to just list out certifications because, yeah, if anyone specifically tells you, like, just get this certification and you'll be fine, I would not listen to them. So, what you should do, though, is find out where you want to work, whether it's, remote or in your area, or if you're willing to cast a broader net, and pick the job title that you want. That's either your dream job title or what you're going to try and go for first. So if that's penetration tester, if it's SOC analyst, if it's malware reverse engineer, if it's, GRC, whatever, pick that. Find out what, people are calling that on job postings, like, SOC analyst, you might be called security engineer, whatever. Go look at, like, literally try and find 200 job postings of that. You probably can. There's still lots of job postings. Some people are saying there's no jobs. They're competitive, but those job postings are there. And look at what they're doing. Compile a list of what they want. Do they want, do I see security plus on like 75% of the job postings? Do I see experience with this tool on majority of the job postings? Do I see, whatever certification and requirements and skills and experience that is, and then create a roadmap. And personally, I suggest you put dates on it. I'm going to get this cert because I saw that it was on 70% of job postings by this date. I'm going to spend time learning how to use this tool and write a blog about it by this date. And that will help you to land that, because, yeah, there is no cert that is a golden ticket anymore. Like, the days of like OSCP and you can get a pen test job or whatever. Those are gone. So, yeah, check the job postings. See what they're doing and rely on that, because that is what realistically at the end of the line is what's on those job postings. Because a search should do two things. A really good one will do both, but you could take one for one of the reasons too. So one of them is that they just get you past like a HR filter into an interview. So I won't name any certs, but there's quite a few where that's the biggest thing they are. Like you do them, you get that, you put it on your resume, and that gets you past an HR filter or a resume screener that says, okay, they have this cert. It proves that they know some of the stuff we need. Someone else has done the work of testing them on that. We'll take that cert's word for it. So that's one. The second one is that it just forces you to actually learn something. Whereas, like, you could learn that stuff for free or less expensive, but doing the cert makes you be like, hey, I actually have to like study this stuff, learn how to do it, learn how it works. And then writing that cert is really just the end product of all of that studying. So they should do one of two of those things. So the second one will be more helpful in an interview. The first one is more helpful to get you an interview. So anyway, that is my advice. Okay. Could you suggest where I should refer to a roadmap for getting into OffSec and threat intel, personal choice opinion? Okay, well, if we're going for my personal choice opinion, I would check out the TCM security roadmap for like red team or offensive security. So if you go on our LinkedIn in the top posts, or if you check out, there's a video, I think it's one Brit just linked. It's like how to be an ethical hacker in 2025. It is a roadmap. It is not all just TCM stuff. It is all products on, like, there is TCM stuff because TCM stuff is good. But there is non-TCM stuff, and it is a very detailed roadmap. So I would check that out. This is a really good question. Why is it recommended to start with help desk job and then pivot to cybersecurity? I'm finishing college with a bachelor in computers, and most of my training is cybersecurity focused. So I think that suggestion a lot of times is for people that don't have that bachelor's experience. So they're coming in without formal education in something like computer science. And in that scenario, you are going to need to get the fundamentals. You're going to need to learn them, prove you know them, and then make your way up. So I think that's one of the reasons it's suggested. The other reason is if you look back like 10, 20 years, there was not as many things like bachelors of computer science. Most of those people, they weren't going into IT, they would be going into other roles. So people that were getting into IT were not going to university. They were maybe doing certs, or just like at that time, if you're good at computers, you could start in some sort of IT help desk role, and then they would have moved on from that to cybersecurity role and like up the chain. And then that's how they got their job. So if you ask those people that are further on in their career, they'll say start with help desk because that's how they did it. It's definitely not the only way to go. But it is a good path. It is, one of the most common paths to getting into cybersecurity. But that being said, if you do have all of that school education, then you could probably leverage that to start at a higher role. The other thing too is we talked about this, like the job market is not great right now. So the higher level the roles, the more competition there is going to be for them. So that is just the reality of that right now. So all right, so we're already about 18 minutes over now, so I am going to wrap it up now. There's some great questions there again. So if you just tuned in now and you want to go through what we did today, check out my GitHub. Like, it's there for free. You can follow through all the commands. All the assembly code has comments on every single line to make it nice and easy to learn from. And then I've got one quick announcement here. So we are doing a SOC live training by Andrew Prince. It is really, really good training. We've already run it once already, and it filled up, and it was very, very well received. That is running from April 14th to 17th. There's still some spots available, but if you are interested, it will most likely fill up. So definitely worth checking out. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this exploit development. I will be back in about 3 weeks to do this, but we'll have someone else streaming next Wednesday at noon Eastern. So thank you very much. And